Mesdames et messieurs, the greatest festival of our contemporary society, the Olympic Games, is about to begin. This is going to be close.
Oh! They're all completely gassed! They've given it everything on the global bucket! Oh, yeah! Go! Oh!
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But that is an Olympic championship.
Ready.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. Each week we share stories from athletes and people behind the scenes to help you have more fun watching the games. I'm your host, Jill Jarris, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello, how are you?
I hope I'm not dead.
Oh, please. Oh man, that would be rough. That would be really rough.
We're recording this ahead of time because we're going to be traveling when this airs. And when this airs, our plane should be landing.
That is correct.
So yeah, I hope it's all going well.
We've had a great flight. We're going to get through customs with no problems.
So over the weekend, we were talking and I mentioned how we have about 100 Shukflistanis competing in Paris in both the Olympics and Paralympics. And one of the reasons we got to that number is we have the entire U.S. fencing team now as Shukflistanis.
Which is incredible and amazing. Thank you to USA Fencing for having you down to Media Day. You got just so much time with the whole team. It was incredible. Yeah, so today we've been bringing you different weapons in fencing. There's 3 weapons, epee, saber, and foil. And today we've got the entire foil team, men and women are both competing. And yeah, we're wrapping up our interviews ahead of when we go to Paris. So we're going to bring you the rest of our fencing interviews. We don't have any other news after this because obviously we're taping early, but this is a longer show anyhow. But yeah, tell us who we've got, Alison.
Okay, so we have Jackie Dubrovich is a graduate of Columbia University, where she was a 4-time All-American. Jackie was part of the team that won gold at the 2024 World Cup, and she will be competing in her second Olympics in Paris in both the team and individual events. Lee Kiefer is the reigning Olympic champion in women's foil, the first American to ever win gold in individual foil. She has won 11 individual World Cup and Grand Prix gold medals and is currently ranked number 1 in the world. Maia Weintraub is the 2022 NCAA individual champion. She was representing Princeton, and she is the youngest member of the foil team. She will be competing in the team competition in Paris. On to the men, we've got Miles Chamley-Watson, who was born in London, came as a small child, so you will hear a bit of an accent with him. He has been on the U.S. men's senior team since 2011 and first competed at the Olympics in London. In 2019, Miles was a member of the first American team to win a senior world title in men's foil. Nick Itkin won bronze in the men's team in Tokyo. He is a 2-time NCAA individual champion and the reigning world individual silver medalist, and also currently ranked number 1 in the world. And Alexander Massialas is a 3-time Olympic medalist, winning bronze in the team event in Rio and Tokyo, and individual silver in Rio. Paris will be his 4th Olympics. A couple notes on our conversation with Alexander. We talked about his father and coach, but I don't think we ever gave him a name, and that is 3-time Olympian Gerek Massialas. And he also mentions Race, and that's his former Olympic teammate, Race in Bowdoin. Last for the men is Gerek Meinhardt. He is a 5-time Olympian and 2-time team bronze medalist. He has won 7 world champion medals and 17 World Cup medals. But first up, we've got Lauren Scruggs. Lauren won the 2023 NCAA individual foil title, and she is competing for Harvard. She will compete in both the team and individual competitions in Paris. So take a listen to all of our foil fencers. And I want to ask you first, why foil?
Foil, I mean, my brother did it, so I think naturally I just ended up picking that. I wouldn't say I really had like a choice, but I think it just ended up that, that's what I'm good at. So.
And you're from that fencing hotbed of Queens. Mm-hmm. And both your brother and you fenced. How did you get into it?
Yeah, so my brother is a big fan of Star Wars, and he's 6 years older than me, so kind of everything he did I was put into, and then kind of just stuck with it.
I love how many times I'm hearing Star Wars people. What about fencing keeps you in it? What about it is the sport for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just like how competitive it is, the nature of the competition. It's you versus someone else just battling it out. I think that's something very few sports you get that kind of personal kind of feeling. I guess maybe like tennis or boxing. But yeah, I just like that whole kind of just you against your opponent, and you're really trying to just fight it out. I really love that.
Are you a sneaker or fencing shoe person?
Sneaker.
Why?
It's just cooler, better. I don't know.
Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I mean, right now, my sneakers are pretty cool. They're Isabel Marant's. Love them. So, yeah.
What are you finding going back and forth between collegiate fencing and international fencing?
I think that they're equally as competitive. I think collegiate fencing is just a different type of tournament, but I think I still feel that competitive energy on the international scene as well.
So fencing tournaments are long. The days are long. How are you keeping yourself in it mentally and physically?
Yeah, I mean, listening to music is a big one. I listen to a lot of music. Also, just honestly not talking to people is a big one. You got to preserve all the energy you can, and talking takes a lot of that out. And then also just eating, making sure you're eating the right foods at tournaments. Also getting a good night's rest is important. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite snack? I have to add, whenever people mention food, because I just ate my snack.
Yeah, I mean, bananas are just the best. Can't go wrong with a banana.
Are you a talker on the strip?
No. Pretty quiet.
To yourself?
Nope. Just blank in my head.
Why is that work for you?
I think because at the end of the day, the best fencing happens when it comes naturally. And I think thinking as a whole means things aren't coming naturally. You have to process it. So for me, I think I fence best when nothing is going on in my head. And, I'm not interacting with anyone, not even my coach really that much. So, yeah.
Do you do a lot of prep work against your opponent?
No. You just got to feel it out. That's my philosophy.
So you're just going to go in, see what happens right at the moment?
I mean, I'll think about oh, this is what they like to do, but honestly, each bout is going to be different. So I don't think it really helps to prep so much because it might kind of block your creativity, throughout the bout. How
about being coached during bouts?
Yeah, my coach gets me. I've been with him for 10 years or so. He knows what I want to hear, what I need to hear. But generally, I like to be coached throughout the bout, but I don't like someone constantly yelling at me, just a little, tip.
And how is that different from individual versus team? Because with team, there's a lot going on.
So for team, I think it's honestly less is better. There's only so much you can coach and, tell the athlete to do. At the end of the day, it's just how they're fencing in the team event. Individual, I think there's a lot more room for improvement just because of the nature of the tournament, just a lot different. But yeah, I'd say the two differences in the tournament just impact the coaching a lot.
What's your favorite action?
Definitely a 6 flick to the back.
Okay.
Like that. Or a runner.
Okay, explain both of them.
Yeah, so a 6 flick is basically you kind of just scoop up the blade and then kind of throw it and hit them on the back. It's pretty satisfying. And then the runner is honestly, as it sounds, you just kind of run at them and hit them. Pretty satisfying. Yeah.
I'm just getting this.
Yeah.
I wish we had visuals for a podcast. What's your favorite kind of opponent to face?
Someone pretty clean fencer, you know what you're getting when you get in front of them. Yeah, just someone clean.
Because I want to ask a little bit about your foil equipment. Are you a tinkerer?
No.
That doesn't surprise me. Has it been the same long time, keeping everything in line?
Yeah, a pretty standard setup. I don't think I'm changing things very often. Yeah.
Is that a comfort or is that reliable?
I think it's in part because I'm a little lazy. I'd rather just keep it the same and not deal with fixing it and whatnot. But I mean, I guess I'm just used to it by now, so I keep it that way. But yeah, I think I'm lazy.
Did winning the NCAA title feel like pressure or like confidence?
Definitely just, I guess, confidence. NCAA's is just a crazy tournament in itself, so I guess to come out of that just winning it is a big deal. But also, I feel like there was no pressure on me to win. It was just like, it's a super tough tournament. Like anything can happen. So it was just a boost in confidence.
How is it different than international?
The setup is it's just a lot different from the international setup. So it's all 5 touches versus international. It's mostly 15 touches. So you only fence 15s when you make it through. You fence everyone in the tournament to 5, and then out of that, the top 4 from that get sent to the final rounds, and then you do the 15s like normal. So I'd say it's actually a lot harder than what we're used to. So yeah, it's just a weird format to go from after constantly being abroad.
You have your college team and now you have your national team, and how is that switch and kind of coming together as a group?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people on the national team, obviously, I meet them on the NCAA team, like the whole men's saber squad.
Men's saber team is all crimson.
Yeah, my teammates are all there. I mean, it's just kind of like comforting to see, my friends from college, obviously traveling with me to Paris. But yeah, it's really nice.
What are you looking forward to the most in the competition?
Honestly, just to represent my country and, show, what I've got and try to, make my friends and family back here proud. And then also, I'm really excited to see the other athletes. USA basketball is a big one. Really love Anthony Edwards, obviously LeBron. So super excited just to support, Team USA.
Mental during the tournament. You don't seem like you would be a nervous fencer.
No.
Because everyone who I've asked that question to, they're like, yes, everybody's nervous, except for Lauren Scruggs.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to go out there and, do what you got to do. I mean, yeah, you could lose, you could win, but, it's better to try and, go in with confidence. And if you go into the bout already scared, it's going to translate to, I think, the fencing. So it's best to just go in and say, anything can happen. I could win, I could lose, whatever.
That's very mentally healthy for you, Lauren. Great, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to have you say your name for the tape.
Okay, Jackie Dubrovich.
So this is second Olympics.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
How has your mental training changed going in now that you kind of know what to expect?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely an advantage to know how an Olympics goes. I will say that I was in Tokyo, and Tokyo was definitely not your typical Olympic experience. So I don't know if I quite really know what the Olympics is about, but I would definitely say in the last 3 years, I've placed a special emphasis on my mental training, especially as an older athlete as well. Obviously, working on your technique and your strength and conditioning, that's a big part of the game, but I think the mental training is equally as important, and I think I've realized that later in my career, and so that's definitely been an emphasis.
I love how you're 29 and an older athlete.
Well, compared to these 21-year-olds,
I know. How has that changed your training physically? What was your training like at 21 versus 29?
I would say it's definitely smarter now, more efficient, more of an emphasis on rest and recovery as well. I just can't necessarily train as much as I still train a lot, but I'm definitely paying attention to my body, any signs of fatigue or aches and pains. I'm being very cognizant of that.
So speaking of aches and pains, we were just in the hallway. You were complaining about your foot.
Yeah.
So now I'm concerned for you, Jackie.
Yeah.
Is it anything we need to be concerned about?
No, just part of, it's a long season. Fencing is such a tough sport in that our season is like pretty much 11 months of the year. We have only 1 month of break, and then we start up again for the national season. So it's just part of it, part of the overuse in training, and hopefully I'll be all good to go in a couple weeks.
I did not realize that about the season. So where does the Olympic schedule fall in within the season?
At the very end. Yeah. So we start typically in September, and we're going to be competing in end of July. So it's at the tail end, and you're trying to peak at the right time. You're trying to listen to your body, and it's definitely very, very difficult.
So how do you balance qualifying versus saving yourself for the actual competition?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, at the beginning of the season, I looked at a calendar with my coach and my strength and conditioning coach as well, and we kind of mapped it out, and we were very specific about where we wanted to peak, where we wanted to taper down, where are there moments that maybe a competition is not as important, and we're just very methodical in our approach. Like I said, fencing is hard because it's 11 months of the year, and the Olympics is obviously the main event, and so just being very methodological and very smart about our preparation.
And then you've got team and individual
Yes.
that
Yeah.
you're balancing. So how do you balance that during a competition?
Yeah. Well, the individual event is always the first one. And so you give it your all in the individual event, and then you forget everything the moment the individual competition is over. And fencing is very unique in that it's a very individual sport, right? It's you versus your opponent. But then you kind of have this hybrid where you're still competing against one other person, but it's in a team kind of structure. And so you kind of have to pivot a little bit mentally where it's different strategies, different, we plan for each team accordingly, but you have to think about how your fencing impacts the greater team, whereas in the individual event, it's just yourself that's being impacted.
This gives me a chance to ask a little bit about team strategy within the team event because there are individual bouts.
Yeah.
So is it we just want to win every bout, or is there a more complex strategy going in?
It's pretty complex and it varies based on the opponent. It also is very dynamic because it's in real time. So we may have to pivot in real time where that means maybe a strategy that we went into the bout thinking that we were going to implement, and then let's say we are losing and we weren't anticipating that in that leg we would be losing, and so you have to recalibrate and have a different strategy. You also have substitutions, and so it's a very dynamic, ever-changing strategy that we have to implement.
How much input as a more veteran athlete are you putting into that strategy versus your coaches coming into it?
Yeah, I would say so. Lee, Kiefer, and myself are the veteran members of the team, and for us, I think Ralph really values our input and our experience, and it's very collaborative. Ralph is the women's foil national coach, and it's a very collaborative experience. He takes our opinions and input into account, but ultimately he is the national coach and he will make the decision, but we definitely appreciate how collaborative he is in his approach.
I want to handicap the foil tournament in Paris a little bit. So obviously the women are from the U.S. are very strong. What other countries should we be paying attention to?
Yeah, I would say Italy. Italy is always a big, tough competitor for us. France is also, and they have the home court advantage as well. So definitely the two teams to look out for. Japan is also very strong. It's a small event, right? It's only 8 teams, and so everybody there deserves their spot. And so even if you may have had good team matches against them in the past, the Olympics is a different ball game, and so we're taking each opponent very seriously.
How much are you fencing against your opponent versus fencing your own match?
Yes, that's a great question. I would say, so my mentality is when I like to prepare, I watch video, I like to talk about how I'm going to fence each person, but at the end of the day, you're at your best when you're fencing your game. And I think as an older athlete, I am very confident in my abilities. I'm very comfortable in who I am as a fencer, and I know what I'm capable of, and I know my strengths and weaknesses. And so just remaining steadfast in that and not wavering, I think, is when I really fence my best.
What's your favorite action?
My favorite is in fighting. So when you're in a close distance, I like to score a lot of touches that way. I'll score behind my back. And I just love in that moment when you're just so close to your opponent and finding the target is my favorite action.
What's your grip?
My grip? It's just my fiance. He does all of my my foils, and so he is the person to ask. Yeah.
But there are the two different grips.
You're talking about
the pistol versus...
pistol. Yeah.
Okay, why?
Yeah. Well, because so in foil, you very rarely see anybody fencing with French grip. It's more prevalent in épée, but in foil, no, we have pistol grip, and it's just more technical. You feel the blade a lot better, and so there is actually nobody on the circuit that fences with a French grip. Yeah, it's not common at all in foil.
And why foil?
Well, I've always fenced foil. I started when I was 8, and that was the weapon that I was put in. And I never really considered any other weapon. My build is kind of an épée fencer. I'm tall, I'm 5'10". So, sometimes people would ask me if I could fence another weapon, what it would be, and that my build is very épée-esque. But I've just always fenced foil. I like how technical it is. It's usually the weapon that most people start off in. So you learn your technique, and then you venture off into épée or saber. And so I've loved it and wanted to stay.
What advantage is your height in foil, and is there a disadvantage to being taller than some of the other fencers?
I would say overall it's probably an advantage. You'll see that for the most part on the circuit, it's taller, more athletically built, muscular women at the top. We have a longer reach. It's harder for opponents to reach us, especially if you're fencing a smaller fencer. You're probably more explosive, and just like when you're lunging, I can cover more distance. Usually, though, that means I'm a little bit slower than some of my smaller opponents, and so you have to take that into account. You're always working on footwork and recovery from lunges, so it's still very important.
I want to add, because we're talking about footwork and we're talking about shoes.
Yes.
Because do you wear a fencing shoe?
No.
Okay. So
I
what
don't.
do you wear?
Yeah, that's a really hotly debated topic in the fencing community. So I had tried fencing shoes, but for me, I found the most success with court shoes. So I wear Asics shoes. Anything that's like tennis, badminton, I've just found that the traction, the support, and there's a little bit of cushion, but not too much. And so for me, I'm very particular, and I finally found at like 28 years old my ideal shoe. And so it's an Asics shoe, and I think it's the best one I've ever tried.
Is it the balance between sort of stickiness and slide that?
Yeah, I would say for me, the optimal, I need to feel, I don't like too much cushion because I like to feel the strip and actually feel my footwork. I guess like feel the articulation of my foot. I want a little bit of cushioning because the blow when you land from a lunge, it can be quite hard. And I'm also taller, bigger, muscular, and so I come down pretty hard, but not too much. I don't want to feel like I'm fencing like Hokas, right, where there's like so much cushion, it feels like a cloud. And then not too heavy, right? You want to be flight of foot too, so it's a delicate balance, and I've finally found the model that works for me.
How many do you bring with you?
So to competitions, I only bring one pair, but I do currently have 4 or 5 pairs of the shoe that I circulate between competitions and training, so a lot.
How are you training on the balance in your body?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do a lot of like proprioceptive work.
I don't know what that is.
So proprioceptive, it's like being aware of your body and like where it is in its surroundings, I guess. So a lot of we work on a lot of core. Core is like really important in fencing, especially with footwork, with recovery. It's really, really important. And keeping the center of balance, right? We're always changing direction. So you want to know where your body is in its space and also be able to pivot and change directions very quickly. Fencing is so dynamic, right? We're moving back and forth. Maybe foil fencing, I would say saber fencing, right, is much faster. But foil fencing, I would say there's a lot more change of direction. There's a lot more pushing, pulling of the distance and recovery. So just being aware of where your body is on the strip is very important.
You said fiance who
Yes.
takes care of your equipment.
Yes.
Do you ever just want to put the foil on the table and just say, really?
Well, I'll add another wrinkle to it. My fiance is also my coach. So we've been together for, 12, 13 years, and he's been my coach for this quad, or these last 3 years.
So how do you balance that when you're boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance,
Yes.
and when you are coach, student?
It's a tricky balance. It is very tricky. I would say, we have to make an active effort to separate fencing in our home life. So we try not to talk about it too much when we're at home, and we're just together, and we're not it sometimes comes up in conversation, but when we're at practice, right, that dynamic shifts. He needs to tell me what to do, and so it's still difficult and it's still a work in progress, but obviously, at the end of the day, I know that he is trying to make me the very best that I can be, and it's coming from a good place. So if he yells at me or if he tells me what to do and I don't like it, I know that ultimately it's coming from a good place. So it's always a work in progress.
I've been married 27 years. It is always a work in progress.
Yes.
So don't get too comfortable with that one. What's next?
What's next? So I am just focused very much so on Paris. We have a really great team. We have 2 younger members as well as 2 veterans. We are very, very excited about what is to come, both individually and the team event. We have a lot of training camps coming up. a lot of really focused training, and I'm just excited to give it my all.
And the next 2 months look like?
A lot of time on planes. Yeah, we just got back from 3 weeks in Asia, so we're all a little jet lagged right now. We have a training camp in 2 weeks, and we have zonals in Lima, Peru. And then we'll have another training camp, and then we leave for Paris July 19th, one day after my 30th birthday. So it's a nice little birthday gift for me. But yeah, it's going to get crazy, and I'm just trying to remind myself to stay grounded as much as possible and also really relish the opportunity. I'm really taking it all in. I think for me, Tokyo was a very strange experience, being my first Olympics, and so I'm just excited to experience what the Olympics are supposed to be like in Paris. Yeah, just excited for what's to come.
Who's coming?
My parents are coming. I'm really excited because, again, I couldn't see them. In Tokyo, nobody was there. So I'll have my parents. I'll have Brian, my fiance and coach, there with me in the box. And I've heard some friends are trying to go as well. So, and also former teammates and fencers. So it's going to be a big reunion in Paris. So we're excited.
At the Grand Palais.
I know. How lucky are we? I've been seeing pictures. It's unbelievable. I think we have the best venue out of all the sports. So.
I am most excited to see Grand Palais and Versailles.
Yes.
So basically, I'm having like a 17th century Olympics.
It's unbelievable. It's really crazy. And I heard renovations on the Grand Palais, so I'm really excited. What a treat. What a treat.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's
you.
perfect.
Lee Kiefer.
We saw you at Team USA with that brace, and I got all nervous. Brian told me not to worry, but what's going on?
I have been fencing for 20 plus years. I'm almost 30, and it's not unexpected that I have an overuse injury. I won't get into the details, but it's getting better. We're thinking about Paris, and we want things to get better, not worse, but it's good. Thank you for asking.
And Notre Dame. Yes. I understand that Meryl Zagunis was your hero growing up. Did that play into your decision to go there?
Notre Dame definitely had such amazing reputation, and she's probably one of the reasons I even looked at Notre Dame in the first place. So I think that was probably a starting point for me exploring that option.
Now, you are a pocket princess like myself. So how does your height play as a disadvantage and an advantage for you?
Yeah, I grew up thinking it was only a disadvantage, but I was able to discover my own style and kind of get creative from a young age because I had to overcome my height. So now I just think it's an advantage. And if you ask my competitors, they'll just say, she's so annoying to fence, she's so fast and small, she's so lucky. But I didn't think that was always the case, but now I do.
Now we can just sneak underneath.
Exactly.
So I understand you and Gerek went to an event this morning where it was, a couple is going to teach a couple how to fence. Is that nice, or is that, oh God, we're the golden couple of fencing, and media is kind of glomming onto that aspect?
Yeah, I would say Gerek and I, we do train with each other. I would even say we're each other's main primary training partners, so that part it's nice to share with people that we really are going through this journey together. But we're pretty shy and we're pretty private, so when they ask who asked who out or how long have you been dating, we're just we're not telling you.
That's for you.
Yeah.
This was a try versus a quint last time around, so how has that changed your training?
Every Olympics is different. I would say going into the games, we know what the atmosphere is going to be like. So in some ways, we're going to have less distractions than first timers. At the same time, I think we have the capacity to medal, and based off how we mentally prepare ourselves, that can be pressure or it can be positive stress to help us reach those goals.
So this time, obviously, you're the defending gold medalist. How has that changed your mental preparation?
Like I said in my last answer, I'm so excited for myself individually, and I think I can do it, but our team is also so good, and we've won a few World Cups as a team this year, and I think it would be really cool for us to take home that gold together.
Did you go through the imposter syndrome after you won?
I would say I have really bad imposter syndrome when it comes to medical school. Fencing, I've been around long enough. I think I've put in work and time and all the things to make me feel like I belong. But when it comes to school, I don't know what I'm doing there. It's so hard. It's so hard.
I doubt that, Dr. Lay. I doubt that. Has your fencing changed since the last quad?
I would say my repertoire has expanded. I, in general, am a very attack-heavy fencer, and I really value improving my defense, maybe slowing down at points. Yeah, there's a lot of changes I'm working on. Whether or not that comes through in competition, it's being worked on in practice.
What do you want to see from yourself on the strip? What do you think is a successful bout for you?
Yeah, I want to be able to fence free. I want to be able to tap into those actions that make me feel creative and powerful. And I think the Olympics, it comes around once every 4 years that we get nervous and maybe hold ourselves back a little bit from tapping into that flow state. So I really want to just mentally and physically set myself up so I can try to achieve that.
How do you balance the mental training and the physical training? And you actually are, Dr. Kiefer over here.
I'm not Dr.
Not
Kiefer yet. I think I have to acknowledge that it changes based off where you are in life, where you are in your career. I'm married now. I'm partway through med school. I'm going to be 30 years old, not 18 years old. My body feels different, and I need to meet myself where I'm at. And I have a partner who really helps me get through that, and I also have a sports psychologist who helps me cope with it.
What does a day look like? It's very full day, I'm sure, but especially in comparison to prior to Tokyo. What's changed now that you are so old, Lee?
Rest and recovery is much more prevalent. When I make my schedule for the week, for the day, let's say in the morning I'll have an hour blocked off for strength and conditioning. I try to have a nap every day. I definitely eat all 3 meals to their fullest. And then 3-hour practice. After that, I have half an hour to an hour of recovery. And that was not the case before. We just bounced back up in the next day.
What's your favorite action?
I would say the most satisfying action is a backline defense where you have 1 foot off the strip and you're defending for your life and you get that parry and repost. So satisfying.
What's an action that, if you can pull it off, you are so proud of yourself because it's not something you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I do not do point and line often.
Okay, what is that?
Point and line is an action where your arm is extended, your blade is straight, and you can establish it a few different ways. It's a little complicated, which is why I'm not very good at it. But the best case scenario is when you're in the right distance, you get your arm out and your opponent searches for it and they basically stuff themselves on your blade and they feel really bad and you feel really good.
What are you most nervous for in terms of the physical, besides the brace, but just going into the next 2 months? How are you pacing yourself? How are you putting that together?
Yes, the word pace is so important. I would say after every tournament, you kind of go down a little bit, you rest a little bit, mentally you let yourself off, and then you have to work your way back up. So there's those mini cycles and those macro cycles. So obviously the Olympics is like, the up you've been working for 4 years. But all of us competed this past weekend, and we're going to recover, try to handle our injuries, and then mentally and physically just get back there.
What are you thinking about on the strip?
I am more of a take each touch by touch type of gal, but I do notice myself drifting off once in a while. So working on bringing myself back, centering, getting the energy up is really important.
Are you a prep? I bet you are. You're a prep. Doing a ton of prep before a bout.
I guess it's all relative. I'm sure you've heard a lot of different.
Well, Lauren was just in here, so she was like,
Lauren's
I don't prep at all.
Yeah, Lauren's chill. I usually like to do video analysis the day before, and I like to warm up a lot. I like to eat a lot because I think that's the only thing I can beat myself up after a tournament if I literally didn't like nourish myself or like wake up before. I'll be like, why did you do that?
So this will be the first time Marielle will not be on the Olympic team with you. Do you realize that you're her now? That all these little fencers are kind of looking at you? I say that with love, Lee.
No,
I really do.
I know it makes me feel a lot of different ways. I'm so happy that I'm here still fencing. I'm really proud to have helped U.S. fencing, U.S. foil kind of get to this really cool dominant stage that they're at. But yeah, it's also a little bit sad just being the veteran. It just means it's coming to an end soon.
Never. You will always be the gold medalist at Tokyo. You're never a former Olympian.
Thanks.
You're always an Olympian. Well, good luck in Paris.
Yeah.
We'll be there.
Nice to meet
Maia Weintraub.
I want to ask you about the broken leg from 2018.
Oh, yes. You
Yes.
did your homework.
I did do my homework. So I read that. How old were you?
Oh, gosh. I think I was middle school age. I remember it happened at a fencing camp, but I was not fencing. So my parents were very mad. It was actually, I was playing a game of manhunt in the dark, and I slipped on wet concrete, I believe, and I twisted my ankle in a way and banged my fibula into the ground, so I actually fractured my fibula and had a sprained ankle. And I just remember my parents picked me up from the fencing camp, and we drove home, and they were very mad.
I'm sure. But then you got to go back and you decide to keep fencing.
Mm-hmm, yes.
What did that look like? I mean, you were so young. Mm-hmm. I would think that, I mean, you didn't hurt yourself while fencing, mm-hmm. but just coming back from that and the mental issue of, mm-hmm. is this going to hurt? Am I going to hurt myself again?
Mm-hmm. I think that fencing already was a big part of my life. It was incorporated into my daily routine pretty heavily already. So actually, like, not being able to fence for that long of a period of time where I needed to recover was very different and very jarring. And it made me realize, oh, like, I miss fencing. Like, I enjoy fencing. And that also helped me realize, like, oh, like, this might be something I really have a passion for. And it made me want to do the physical therapy, like, get better, go back into fencing. But yes, there was that fear of, oh, what if it happens again? Especially I've had, like, a history of getting sprained ankles, both like my front leg, my back leg. And for a while, like, I wore ankle braces on both my legs, just like as a precaution. But like as time went on, like I learned to do more like balancing exercises, trust myself, and sort of regain that confidence that like I'm preparing in a way where I'm protecting my body. And that's something I learned as I grew older. Like when you're young, you think you're invincible. But as I get older and now, like, I have aches and pains and I need to take care of myself better. I know that's crazy coming from a 21-year-old.
It's okay. You're the same age as my daughter, so I could just be like, but it's true. I mean, 13 is not 21, mm-hmm. and collegiate fencing is not junior fencing.
Yes. And so I think that's something I've like learned through injuries in the past, like how to like take care of myself better now.
How was that change going from junior to collegiate, mm-hmm. and then international kind of at the same time?
Mm-hmm. I think they all influenced each other. I think me traveling at a very young age helped me grow as a fencer. Like, you're fencing some of the best fencers in the world, watching them compete, how they compete, and it influenced me in my fencing domestically. That turned into collegiate fencing, where I sort of was able to experience a more team-oriented environment, because fencing is so individual. Like, it's you and your opponent, and yes, we do have a team competition element at some events, but it's still very much you are fencing someone else, and then you sort of rotate with your team like a relay. But in college fencing, you sort of add up all your bouts. So your bout is just sort of like one point that you can bring in for your team. You have to learn to trust others, to put your faith in your teammates, and you sort of learn to lose control a little bit in a good way. And I think that has really helped me, especially for like team like events and team competitions. And I'm very thankful for college fencing for that.
How would you describe yourself as a fencer?
How would I describe myself? I think I'm very calm. I've been told I have a calming energy when I fence. I've been told by some of my friends that when I fence, I almost like lull the other person into like fencing slower. I'm a slow person.
No, that's so what's your favorite kind of action?
I don't know how to describe it. I guess, so okay, to preference what I'm about to say, my fencing coach has a saying where like slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So I really like those actions where it's very smooth. Like, it's not very, like, I would categorize fencing, like I would describe it in like rhythms and tempos, and I really like very fluid actions, I would say.
Why foil?
Why foil? Foil is the weapon I started with. I think a lot of people start with foil because it shares characteristics with epee and saber, so you could go into either of the other weapons potentially. I did try epee, was bad at epee, so that's why foil.
I like that you're talking about being calm and smooth. How much thinking are you doing on the strip?
A lot of thinking. I think for me, like, strategy plays like a really important role. Because at a certain level, like, you're fencing the same people over and over again, people are always changing. Like, at a certain point, everyone knows like all the actions there are to do, but it's about when to do each action in like response to what the other person does. And I think that strategy is what keeps fencing fun. Like, the game is always changing.
How are you getting better? Like, physically, is it more reps? Is it better cross training? What is getting you better results?
I think because fencing has both like a mental and physical aspect, you do need to attain a certain physical fitness, but also fencing good people and people who are better than you helps you work out like your mind, your problem solving part of your brain. And I think that's also like extremely important in fencing. Like, it's never stagnant. And if you stop being sort of like creative with your actions, if you stop like thinking and just keep doing the same thing that you always do, which is easy to do if you don't have people to push you, that's where like it stops being fun and you can stop your growth.
How has the mental training, fitness kind of play on as you're working changed from Tokyo to over the past 3 years for you?
I think I would say my mental game in fencing has always been relatively strong. And so in the past, I've really worked on like my physical, like endurance, strength, stuff like that. But I think recently, like, I have been fencing for longer periods of time. Like, burnout is a thing. It happens, especially when we have such long seasons from like October to May, just continuously fencing. And I think right now in recent years, like, I've tried to put more of an emphasis on like sports psych and like training like my mental game. Like, it can always be like, you can always get better, like be stronger, and just like re-emphasizing and like relearning tools to help with your confidence. Like, it pays off in the end, I believe.
Okay, I love asking this of foil because I didn't know this was a thing. Sneakers or fencing shoes on the strip?
Ooh, I wear Asics. And that is very popular in fencing, I believe. I've worn them since I started fencing, I believe. Yeah.
Why not fencing shoes?
I think I tried fencing shoes in the past, but I don't know. I think for me, I like the chunkier, more solid foundation of like the sneaker. Yeah, I like using court shoes just better for some reason. Yeah.
Thank you.
Miles Chamley-Watson.
And I love the fact that you're old. And I say that because I'm still older than you. How has your fencing changed, like, technically, from when you were much younger?
Well, I think my fencing's changed. I think the cool thing about the sport is you can always learn more, and I think that's why I still have a love for it. I think, I have a new coach now, which is really awesome, so I'm learning new things. And I think having him implement new things into my regimen has just been really refreshing for me.
Why foil?
There's no other weapon. Nothing else exists. Foil is the best by far.
Why?
Because I do it. I think because it's just it's like chess and boxing combined, right? Where you have to think and react, but also you can play a little bit, which I think is the beauty of the sport. I think it's just also very lovely to watch.
Favorite action?
Six flick.
Okay, what is that?
Where you hit them in the back. Or I have my own move named after me, which is the Chamley-Watson.
Okay, what is that?
It's where I hit somebody behind my head. So, yeah, the New York Times coined it that. So I'm one of like 3 athletes to have their own move, which is pretty cool.
I have noticed that the foil fencers are much taller. So what about foil and height goes together?
Well, I think because we've got a longer reach and a bigger target, but also there are people that are smaller who also do really well as well. So it's kind of go hand in hand. So you don't really need height, but it definitely helps with just the way we fence.
What has changed in fencing during your career, just as a sport as a whole?
I think just the aggressiveness of the sport has changed. I think the way people kind of more aggressive instead of passive, I think is just the nature of the game. It's just changed a little bit, but it's kind of like a pendulum swing, right? Where it's always going to kind of come back to the root of the sport, which is just the intensity, I think, is what is always there for us.
Sneakers or fencing shoes?
Sneakers.
Okay, why?
Because fencing shoes, I'm in them all day, and sneakers are way more comfortable.
But I mean, when you're fencing, do you fence in fencing shoes or do you fence in
I
sneakers?
fence in Nike fencing shoes.
Okay, what about those shoes work for you?
Well, I help Nike make them, so
okay.
Sponsored athlete, and I just like the way they feel and the way they break in. I think is unique.
Okay, now you've opened a whole Pandora's box. What is that process like when you're working with the shoe company to develop a new shoe?
Well, luckily I've been with Nike for 10 years, and obviously the fencing market is still new, so they're not really going to be selling many units, but they were able to work with me on creating a shoe that had the feeling of you can feel the floor, but also the heel has to be strong because we land a lot. So the process was pretty cool, actually, to have my little 2 cents in a shoe is pretty cool.
So what is that process like? Are you getting samples? Are you getting pieces? Are they videoing you?
Yeah, so I go to campus and I work with the design team and I say, this is what I think this shoe needs. And they kind of have their genius people work on the shoes and say, okay, Miles, we're going to come back and then they'll send me the sample and I'll wear it and then I'll send them my feedback back and I'll go back to campus. So it's a really nice collaboration between the two.
Are they going to name the shoe after you?
Well, I am trying to get my own shoe that's not a fencing shoe. So
That's awesome.
yeah. So that would be.
And what would your not fencing shoe look like? What would it?
Well, I think you have to start with a pre-existing shoe first and see how that does. But I have a name for it. But I think the key would be to add, pay homage to the sport in the shoe, but also try and add a little flair too.
We did a whole show on volleyball courts, so we could
Wow.
go off on
Wow.
shoes. Don't even get me started.
Yeah, you can.
So this is going to be Olympics number 3. Have you been getting a lot of, oh, you missed Tokyo, and is that a question that just
Not at all.
really? Okay.
I mean, yeah, I've got media questions about it, but I've never had any injuries in my career, so that was the first one. And what's meant to be is meant to be. Didn't change my life in any way. And I'm fortunate that it was a COVID Olympics, so I'm gonna miss that one.
That's
but
cool.
Yeah.
How is it coming back from injury at this point in your career versus 15 years ago?
I mean, honestly, I'm super healthy and I feel amazing, and my body hasn't really changed. I take care of myself really well, so I don't feel like I'm getting old in that way. I'm very lucky where I haven't had any injuries really. Had a little one, but to be fencing for 20 years and only have one minor injury is pretty lucky. So.
Please, I've had one minor injury podcasting today, so.
Oh, yeah.
I tripped over the wire.
Really? Oh, wow. I hope you're okay, though.
No, I am fine, thank you. But this is why I don't fence. Maia offered to let me hold her weapon, and I said, If I injure one of the U.S. Olympians, they'll never invite me back.
That will be a story. That will be a story.
How are you training the balance in your body?
I mean, I'm lucky where I have a team of full, nutritionists and PTs that kind of help me plan, so I can just worry about competing. But what you eat, how you train, all those kind of things is just important for longevity, right? Past fencing, I want to be healthy, so I've always kind of been aware of what I put into my body.
And also just the left and right side, because obviously
yeah.
you're working one side much more. Okay. How does that work for you?
I mean, that's tennis players understand that. That's there forever. I don't know if that's ever going to go away until I stop fencing. But I think just, understanding like how that is and, okay, how do I kind of try my best to even it out is key. But, who knows really how to help yourself that way, right?
How is it balancing life at this point in your life? And I'm harping on you being old, and you're still 20 years younger than I am. But in terms of like being an elite athlete for this long and at this point, where does it fit in kind of with everything else? And also just kind of having a life.
It's tough, right? Because you definitely like miss out on a couple things, right? But ultimately, I still have the rest of my life to do what I want to do. So you kind of have to sacrifice things for the better. But it's tough. But I think that's the sacrifice you make to be an elite athlete, right? So could cry about it, but at the end of the day, I've been to 3 Olympics, so pretty grateful.
My name is Nick Itken.
So why foil?
I just grew up when I was a little kid choosing fencing, and that's the one I grew up with. So my dad's actually a foil coach, so he's the one who taught me the sport.
What's your favorite action?
I like attack and prep. You can ask any of my teammates. That's the one I do all the time.
Okay, what does that mean?
So basically, like, opponents going forward, starting their attack, and I, like, surprise them, like, lunging into their step forward instead of going back.
Sneakers or fencing shoes?
Fencing shoes.
Okay, why? Because now they're the first person to say fencing shoes.
I like my shoes really thin on the bottom. I like to, like, feel the strip. And a lot of people like it thicker because we get, like, a lot of blisters and, like, stuff like that. But I like my fencing shoes really thin.
Why Notre Dame?
So I had a really good connection with the coach, Bucky Leach, who passed away a couple years ago. And he knew my father really well. And I think he matched my father's coaching style really similarly. So it really worked well for me. And I think I grew a lot with him when I was there as well.
You won a world championship medal.
Yeah.
Did it change how you're approaching tournaments?
Yeah, absolutely. So I won a silver last year, and the year before I won a bronze. But yeah, I mean, that tournament really crushed me. Like, I always dreamed of being a world champion in the senior event. And yeah, I think I grew a lot of confidence and knowing that I can medal back-to-back world championships. And I'm just in great shape going into this summer, and I'm excited to be able to compete on the stage again.
Did it change your mental prep?
Yeah, I mean, I always like competing on those high-level tournaments when the crowd is wild, and that's when I kind of just can fence without thinking too much, and I'm not too nervous. And that's just kind of been always my mental preparation, was once I get to that stage, I'm kind of fencing the best possible. But in the earlier actions, in the beginning of the day, that's when I like struggle to mentally be ready and fence my best.
How do you train for that? Because the fencing tournament day is very long.
Yeah, I mean, I train a lot, and it's weird. Like, in practice, I can fence so many bouts. I can fence all day, and I won't really be tired. But in a tournament, I'll fence 1 or 2 bouts, and I'm like dying, or like not dying, but I'll feel really tired. And so definitely, it's just a whole nother game. And I think it's just experience. Like, tournament after tournament, like I'm growing and I'm getting more adapted to the situation.
Are you training very differently this quad versus the last quad?
Yeah, I feel like I was just so inexperienced back then, and I was just learning from everything I got from my teammates and from my coach, obviously. But now I think I kind of like figured out my own routine, my own schedule, and I know like what steps I need to do personally that works best for me.
Are you training less?
No, I'm training a lot. I think back then I was moving around a lot. I was in school and then out of school and then coming back, and now I have my coaches, my training sessions. I have my sparring partners. We're really good sparring partners with Miles as well, that you'll probably meet later. So yeah, we got a great system going on right now.
What did you work on specifically between Tokyo and this time around?
Yeah.
In terms of actions you didn't have before or ways you faced competitors?
I think my fencing has definitely grown throughout the years. I've definitely been a lot more aggressive now. I think fencing has changed to being really, really aggressive, and everyone's going forward. And I think I've adapted my style as well to that.
Are you a nervous fencer before matches?
It's weird. Like, I will be nervous the first or two, like the first bout, the second bout. But after that, I feel like if I fence well in those first two bouts, or if I win those first two bouts, then I'm not nervous at all, and I'm like feel super confident.
Are you a prepper or a go with the flow?
It depends on the situation, but if it's something that means a lot to me, I will definitely be prepping. But in most day-to-day things, I'm very go to the flow.
So are you watching film? You know you're
Absolutely.
going to get that schedule and
Yeah,
plan it
I
out.
do watch a lot of film. I think it's very helpful, especially just like I know all these people are watching me and adapting, and I think fencing one of the reasons I love the sport is like there's so much of it just figuring out your opponent. Every time I fence these high-level people, I feel like it's a different match even because we both study each other. We know what happened last match, so every time we go in, it's a whole nother mount.
How difficult is it to make adjustments on the fly when you're
Yeah.
on the strip?
I mean that's a huge part of fencing. That's basically what changes from being a average fencer to a high-level fencer is being able to adjust and see what your opponent's doing and change your actions. Especially when I was a junior fencer, I feel like that's what changes the gap from a successful junior athlete to a senior athlete. And junior athlete, you could be successful with just doing a few things really well, but a senior level is where everyone knows what you're doing, so you need to be able to adapt and do different actions.
So you said you feed off the crowd. So
Oh,
this
absolutely.
is going to be way better for you than Tokyo.
Yeah, no, I love the crowd when it's like quiet and there's no people cheering me on. I don't fence my best. I think when it's a big stage and I have people supporting me and yelling and I can barely hear anything, I love that. That's the moments I dream for.
Okay, we've been handicapping each weapon. Let's talk about men's foil.
Yeah.
What other countries besides the U.S. should we be paying attention to?
Definitely Italy. Italy has been like our rivalry for a while now. So Italy, our number one rivalry. That's definitely the main goal to beat them this summer. And then also there's a lot of other good countries out there. Japan has been doing well recently. France has a good team, and yeah.
What makes American foil different than Italian foil or French foil?
I
Or
think-
Japanese? No one's mentioned
Yeah.
Japan before.
Yeah, we kind of all have our very unique styles, I would say. But we both, even with our unique styles, we're able to like come together and make a very difficult team to fence against because we all have our very different styles that not like a specific way of fencing.
When you are a competing team, where do you like to be within the team? You know, in terms of order and
Yeah.
bouts.
I normally fence right before the anchor bout. So I normally set up, which is the second to last bout.
Okay, is that a favorite or are you good at it or both?
I'm comfortable in fencing any position I'm put in, honestly. But I think we've been running this system for a while now, and I think that's what we're going to do because we feel comfortable with it and we're used to it by now.
So the U.S. men's foil team, very, very experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So how much input, how much self-coaching are you guys doing?
A lot, actually. That's like one thing I noticed when I was younger is when I first joined the team at 19, I was the youngest one. I'm still the youngest one. But yeah, I was just taking in so much information from my teammates, and that helped me so much, especially at that young age. And now I'm at the point where I'm giving feedback as well. So yeah, we honestly coach each other a lot in team events, and I think that's one reason why we're very successful.
When you're putting together that team, and it's so funny because in other disciplines, 24 is the oldest. And
Yeah,
you're-
exactly,
and
yeah.
You're the baby in this group. It's like, oh, I've been to the Olympics before. Yeah, Gerek's been to 5. You know, sit down. But does that put you in a position of being like, I've got a world championship medal, I've got NCAA titles, and I'm still kind of the baby of the group, you know, in
Yeah.
terms of your fencing?
Yeah. It's crazy how experienced and like successful this team has been. When I first joined the team, they were like winning every single tournament back to back. So I had to do something crazy to make that team, and that was like motivation, and I grew off of them. But yeah, now I don't feel like as much as the child anymore. I feel like I'm basically one of the members just because we spent so much time together, and I've been part of the team for so long. But yeah, like when I first joined the team, they took me in, and I studied everything they did and how they treated a team event, and I grew so much.
Are you a thinker or a flow fencer?
I'm definitely a thinker. I think everyone will say the same way too. Definitely a thinker, but there is a moment in a bout where something's working, and then I won't think about certain actions; it just come naturally. But pre-bouts, I'm very, very. I like to calculate a lot, like what they're doing and stuff. So it's hard for me to just go into a bout blind.
And how is that a handicap on the strip in terms of your brain is working overtime?
Yeah, I mean that's just how I grew up fencing. I've always felt like I needed some kind of information going into bouts. and it's hard for me to just be able to go into a bout without any specific plan. Obviously, it needs to be like adjusted a lot because bouts change often. But yeah, there are a lot of fencers who they just go forward and they feel the timing to finish, and I don't think my fencing really works like that necessarily.
You're ranked first in the world right now, so everyone is gunning for you, and I don't think that's a surprise. Does that ever just bring on imposter syndrome? Do you see like, what is happening here? I'm number one in this field.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, this is pretty recent, so it is crazy to think about when it first happened. Yeah, I definitely had like a moment where I was like disbelief and like not really sure how this all happened, but I just gotta like root myself, and I honestly like being the underdog. I remember when I was a kid, I loved being the underdog, but now I just grow to take a new role, and I just treat each tournament differently by itself. So as we come in this Olympics, I won't be thinking about that too much.
What would be success in Paris for you?
I mean, obviously a gold medal. I've been dreaming with that since I was a little kid. So I know.
But is that the only thing? Like, will you be okay if you fence well but don't?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as long as like I fence my best, then I'll be happy. But I think it's just like there's gonna be so much pressure the day of the tournament, and as long as I don't let that pressure get to me and I can fence my best, then I'll be happy.
Okay, so what thing have you been working on that if you can pull it out on the strip in Paris, you'll be like, that was it. That was the action that I've been trying to get.
A specific action? I feel like any action that I even try to do, they just come naturally. I won't even think about it. I'll just start doing it in a tournament. I'm actually the kind of fencer where like I'll see something one time and I'll just randomly start doing it in tournaments, biggest stage or anything. So there's not a specific action, honestly.
Okay. And how cool is the Grand Palais?
Oh, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be sick. I'm so excited.
I'm excited because we will be there. Will you have a chance to get to see anything else?
Yeah, I hope so. Luckily, we have a World Cup in Paris once a year. So I've been there a few times. But, yeah, definitely, I love the country, I love the city. So I'm excited to be there back again.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, John.
Alexander Massialas.
I read a great article where you talked about that you did other sports before you went into fencing. And I'm curious how that played into your career as a whole.
I think for a lot of fencers, it's important to try and branch out, because one reason that I ended up, I think being so successful in fencing is the fact I really loved it. And the reason I loved it was I was offered all these opportunities to play these different sports, right? But I kept on coming back to the one thing that I loved, and that was fencing. And so the fact that I wasn't pushed into training, 5 days a week right from the very beginning and only focusing on one sport, helped me develop a love for the sport organically. It never felt like it was forced, and I always felt like I had opportunities. And if I were to come back to fencing, that was my own decision. And so being able to try out all these sports, as I just noted, allows me to love fencing organically, but B, gave me so many different skills that cross over into fencing, whether it's the footwork and the hand-eye coordination of basketball, or the leg strength of skiing, or the overall conditioning of swimming. These are all skills that apply to fencing and helped me at a young age, because we're not doing strength and conditioning, at 7, 8 years old.
You hope.
Yeah, I hope. I'm building all these skills and these muscle memory just through different sports.
Obviously, I'm sure the press goes nuts over this. Your father is your coach. He was an Olympian. So literally the weapons are around the house as you're growing up. Talk a little bit about that relationship growing up and just that dad versus coach.
Well, absolutely. That's one reason I was interested in the sport right from the beginning. It would be a lie to say I was introduced to fencing any other way. But I just remember walking through the halls of our apartment in San Francisco, this tiny little place, but there was fencing artwork on the walls. There was old fencing equipment here and there. And I just remember this old little trophy case that he used to have that had all his Olympic rings and Ivy League rings and other miscellaneous things from his old fencing career and awards from his old fencing career. And I just remember anytime I had a play date, a friend over, ultimately we'd always come back to that spot, right? Like it was something I could show off to all my friends, and it was just something I felt so proud of. And so when the opportunity arose, when my dad started his own program to start fencing, I knew I wanted to do it right from the beginning. My dad actually pushed me away for the first 2 years. He had a strict rule that he doesn't start fencers until they're 7 years old. And one thing from the very beginning that my parents emphasized was, if you want to be a fencer under your dad, you're going to be like any other student, right? You don't get special treatment and you have to follow the same rules. And so if that's the case, you still have to wait till you're 7 years old. So for 2 years, I was there, free daycare, half of the time, watching and engaged with the sport that I love and I wanted to do in the future. But on other days, sulking in the corner because I couldn't start. So that's kind of how my relationship with fencing has started. And I think that compartmentalization of father at home and coach on the strip is something that I've tried to stay true by my whole career until I got a little bit older. And obviously once you get older and you get your own ideas and you become an adult, things change a little bit. But I think it's only natural, and my dad understands that too. So we both know now this is more, we know it's no longer this, father at home, coach on the strip kind of situation. It is a bit of a mix, but in the best kind of way that there is.
Right, because now this is Olympics number 4. You've been doing this a very long time. You are coaching also as well. So how does that change when you're, at first you're hitting the Olympics when you're 20 versus hitting the Olympics when you're 30, but you still have to be coached?
I mean, I don't think any fencer is the perfect fencer. And so I'm astutely aware of that fact. And so I know I need the coaching. I need someone there to right the ship when I'm not seeing things clearly. I like to think that I have a pretty good head on my shoulders, especially for the sport of fencing and, tactically what changes I need to make during the middle of a bout. But I think any fencer would be wrong if they said that they didn't need a coach. And for me, that's my dad. And obviously the way we operate now is a little bit different than when I was 18, right? Before it was a lot more of a yes, sir, no, never no, but yes, sir, okay, sir, right?
In a minute, sir.
Yeah. Even if I didn't agree, I just put my head down and said yes. Now there's a little bit more back and forth talk because my dad, he's always respected me as a fencer, but he knows I'm older now. I have so much experience as a fencer. I've been to more Olympic games now than he has, right? So he is such a smart and talented coach that he knows there are times that he has to take my advice too. And so now there is a little bit more of a back and forth, but again, only in the healthiest way. It may not look like it sometimes, right, in the heat of the moment, but ultimately we both know that we're here for each other's best interests. And I'm not taking anything he says to heart or, the yelling. I know he's just trying to get it through to me in a high pressure situation. And I'm trying to relay the information back, what I'm seeing too. And so I need to make sure he hears it. So sometimes it sounds a little bit worse than it actually is.
And he's Greek-American?
Greek-American.
Yeah, of course he's yelling. How has training changed over these years?
I just turned 30 last month.
Shut up, you're still 20 years younger than me. So,
well, a lot of people say, 30 is not even that old, especially nowadays in sports, right?
But for fencing,
it
is.
We always were told that 30, once you hit 30, it's over the hump. But as modern medicine has progressed and sports medicine and people have just taken care of their bodies better, we've seen fencers really still be successful and gain ground up into their mid to late 30s. Heck, Gerek got silver in Shanghai a couple days ago, right? So I wouldn't call myself old in that capacity, but I have been doing this on the senior circuit since I was 14 years old. So there's a lot of wear and tear on my body. And for a long time, I never had to deal with any injuries. I felt like I can, wake up fresh and just keep going. Now, as I've gotten a little bit older, there's some little bit more chronic stuff I have to manage. So yes, I'm not training as much by volume as I was back in the day, but I'm still putting in the hours. And what I'm not doing in physical training, I'm doing in mental preparation, whether it's watching video, whether it's analysis of my own game or other fencers' game, or honestly just helping coach at the club. Because when you look at the game as a coach, you really have to analyze and think for yourself, which in turn helps you as a fencer and analyze your own game on the strip when you're fencing as well. So I take all of these and kind of use it as mental preparation, mental training that I wasn't necessarily as focused on as a younger fencer, but now as an older fencer have to put the emphasis on as my body, I have to listen to my body a little bit more.
What actions have changed, both in terms of what you're able and not able to do over the years and how the sport has evolved?
I think a lot of the sport has been built on aggression, especially in men's foil, and that's something I really like to do ever since I was younger. But instead of trying to chase people down like I used to, like just run them down the strip and hit them, which I still can do right now more occasionally than regularly, but now it's being more methodical, right? Like still applying that same level of pressure, but in a different way. Instead of just running my opponent down, really playing with my actions, keeping my opponent on their toes, making sure they don't know what my next move is, and picking my spots accordingly. So I don't have to go full speed every time. I can slowly push my way down, see an opening, and boom, I'm right there. Or I draw out their action, and I come back, I have a counter right away. But that takes a lot more experience, a lot more mental preparation, and that's why now I'm better positioned in that capacity to mix up my actions, maybe more so than when I was a younger fencer.
Are you an equipment fiddler?
Not too much. I mean, I fix my own equipment, but...
Okay. So you're fixing your own equipment. Is it because you want to know exactly what it is? Is it that you're that kind of person with the puzzles? Or is it just, I don't want anyone else touching it?
No, I mean, if we have an armorer there, I give it to the armorers. I have 100% faith in my armorers, but, it's just a matter of necessity, right? At competitions, you don't always have an armorer. It's always good to know how all the fencing equipment works and how to fix your own stuff in a pinch. Even if you have an armorer there, maybe they're busy, maybe they're unavailable. So I like to know exactly what's going on with my equipment. And when we have an armorer there, I do give it to them, but I always go back and test it before I compete anyway, right? I may not have to fiddle with it. They've always come back perfect from the U.S. armorers. Shout out to them. But it is something important for every athlete to at least know the basics of how their equipment works. And as a mechanical engineer, for me, it was very interesting, at least, because I hated circuits class, but this helps me at least contextualize it and make it really a real application outside the laboratory.
Fencing shoes or sneakers on the strip?
On the strip, fencing shoes.
It's so funny because all the foil guys are fencing shoes, and everyone else is like, "Oh no, we hate fencing shoes." Why does that work for you?
I mean, I think they're just the best shoes for my style of fencing. If there was a sneaker out there that was better, that I liked better, that I thought was better fit for fencing, then I'd probably go with that. But I haven't met a shoe that really fits that. And I think the current fencing shoes that I use are basically my favorite ones I've ever used. So I don't really see myself straying from those and trying anything out unless they come with rave reviews.
So you have a very experienced Olympic team coming into men's foil, and you guys seem very close, but how is that coming together? Because you're all sort of in your own worlds, and then you've got to come back together and do this team competition. And even though it's individual, it's still team dynamics.
I mean, Gerek, Miles, and I have been traveling on the senior circuit and competing for 16 years now. We better be brothers at this point, right? And they really are brothers to me. I can go with them go to them with any problem I have on or off the strip. They'll always be 100% supportive of me, right? Nick, younger, but same way, right? And he's someone that from the very beginning I could tell he's someone that really gets it and gets that team camaraderie. And I give an example sometimes. His first World Championship team was 2019. And that was the first year Miles wasn't on the team and Race was still involved. So it was a big deal, right? Because Miles had been such a staple for so long. And though Nick had made the team, he still didn't have a lot of team fencing experience. And so for the World Championships, my father, who was the coach, was like, hey, Nick, you're on the individual event for sure. Like, you deserve the spot in the team. Look, we want to roll with you, but honestly, Miles has the experience. You're just not quite there yet. We don't know what we have in you in a team fencer yet. And this is our time to win the World Championships. So I need to roll with Miles. And instead of saying anything, any disagreement, any disappointment, he just took it in stride and was like, what can I do to help, right? He trained with us up until the day of competition. On the day of competition, he was there from the beginning, from the get, cheering, supporting from the very beginning. And we walked home with the World Championship medal that day, or the gold medal that day. And a lot of people in that position would probably feel a little bit of just like, not jealousy, but just like a longing to be part of it, right? Especially he made the World Championship team. There's no doubt about that, right? But he understood the decision, and he understood the place it was coming from, and he understood the stakes at hand, and he put the best for the team ahead of the best for himself. And that told me from the very beginning everything I need to know about Nick. And so, from day one, he's been a brother, and it's been a pleasure to get to know him better and better over these last several years and grow our relationship from what it was back then to now, just him being a true friend.
Perfect. They're waving friendly.
Okay.
Great.
Gerek Meinhardt.
Also known as Lee Kiefer's husband.
Yes.
And I actually want to start there because I know you guys did something with Mark and Kelly this morning. Is that frustrating to be like, oh, we're just the golden couple of fencing. I'm not a 5-time Olympian with multiple medals.
No, it's not frustrating at all. I think it's pretty cool, especially obviously meeting Kelly and Mark, who are married, and it was really fun to see them fence each other today.
5th Olympics. How has your fencing changed, and how has fencing changed as a sport?
So fencing as a sport is definitely growing, which is awesome to see. My fencing has had to change every year. I think a great thing about fencing is that there are so many different styles that are effective. And my opponents obviously have watched video on me because I've been around for so long, and they know a lot of my weaknesses that I've had to adapt my game over the years. And hopefully I can continue to do that over the next couple months and come into Paris with some fresh ideas, and that'll help me to be successful.
So what does that mean in terms of action and in terms of what you're actually doing on the strip?
Yeah.
How have you changed, and what is your strength now versus your strength?
There are honestly at this point, they're kind of detailed things as far as like certain target areas that opponents are trying to score on me against. And I think over the years, like I was very passive when I was super young and defensive, and then I think I overcompensated and became really overly aggressive to the point of being reckless sometimes. And I think I've developed a more balanced fencing style more recently, but some fencing is so up and down. Like you can be number one in the world and still have really off days. And I think because of that, you get constant reminders of what your weaknesses are. And it's one of the reasons why I'm still doing it, is because there's always room for growth. There are always new actions that you can learn. And it's just really fun to continue trying to improve and strengthen, areas that have been vulnerabilities in the past.
I love talking about balance, and it's a half body sport in that way. So, and the older you get, the harder that becomes to keep that left-right symmetry. So how do you do that?
Unfortunately, I was required to do that because of the injuries that I've had. So I've had a few knee surgeries. Thankfully, the last one was over a decade ago. But, even with smaller injuries, I've been in and out of physical therapy, rehab, and we're always working on trying to even things out, obviously for those injuries, but also just for general health as well, to try not to get too asymmetrical. So I think for those reasons, I'm actually one of the least asymmetrical fencers, especially being one of the older ones that's been doing it for so long. So, yeah.
You mentioned the major injury. How do you overcome the fear of getting hurt again?
It takes a while. Definitely after my 3rd surgery, which had me out the longest, I was physically healthy way before I was ready to mentally get back to where I knew I could be, because you are guarding and you are unsure and lose a lot of confidence when you come back. And I don't have an answer as to what my secret was, because it took me just as long, I think, as it takes most people, and you just kind of have to maintain the hope and just keep putting the work in. And I think eventually I got to a point where that wasn't the case anymore, and I don't know if there was even one moment. It just was. Maybe with all the injuries I have too, sometimes I forget about them at a certain point, and you're just focused on getting better and competing.
What do you want to do on the strip in Paris that will make you feel like, oh, that was a really great bout?
I think I want to get on the strip, and I hope I can just fence free. And whether I come out achieving my goal of gold medals or not, I want to go out there. I want to be yelling. I don't know if all of your listeners have seen a lot of fencing, but you know, when you're fencing well, you're screaming. It's a passion. It's a passionate sport. So I hope that I'm out there yelling, fighting for my life, and also just enjoying it and being in the moment. And then whether the results come or not, I know that like I've done everything I could have to try and accomplish those goals.
Favorite action?
I think my favorite action is attacking my opponent and flicking them on the back.
So many foil people love that move.
Yeah.
I just thought it was me who loved seeing it.
It's when it works, it means you're fencing well because it takes a lot of different factors for it to work.
Okay,
well.
tell me what that takes, because from the layman, it just looks like you are the coolest person ever to hold a sword. But what is actually happening in that?
So you have to time a lot of things in order to get the blade to bend and go over your opponent's shoulder and hit them with the point on the back in foil. And on top of that, in order to get that momentum, you often have to make a very big action, which could signal to your opponent that like, okay, this is coming. So for you to actually be successful and score on that, you have to do a lot of things right, like trick your opponent into leaning over and thinking that you're going to hit them somewhere else, and then make sure you have that distance and that point control to actually hit it once you get your opponent to do what you want as well.
What would you say to people who have never seen fencing before, want to watch it in Paris, but are overwhelmed by the rules and the things happening?
I would say, do a quick search so that you know what the lights mean and you know what the target areas are for the 3 different weapons, as well as like the simple things like the fact that in épée and foil you have to hit with the point, whereas in saber you can hit with the side of your blade. And then once you have those basics down, just appreciate like the fact that it is a combat sport. I think a lot of people watch it and they see it's so artistic and they think it's so creative, but it is a combat sport, and I don't know that it always comes off on the television screen, but try to appreciate that and see the passion and the screaming that the fencers are having, and then watch the referee. And when an action happens and they're calling the point, they'll lift their arm up for the person that gets the point, and then you'll obviously see the score go up as well. But just try to enjoy the physicality of it.
Okay, last question for both of us for the day.
Yeah.
Why do so many fencers become doctors?
I don't have an answer for that.
Is it to stitch themselves up again?
I don't know. I mean, I think there are a lot of injuries in fencing. You do have a lot of exposure to that, like you do in a lot of sports. And I think fencers are very, very driven. And I think they just, for some reason, a high percentage of us end up going into medicine.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, team. So what do you think now after talking with everybody from fencing? But what you thought of fencing before and what you think of fencing now?
Well, I knew almost nothing about fencing before. I mean, I did the research before I went, but I haven't really watched a heck of a lot of fencing. Of course, now I'm going to be there because I have to see both Lee, who is just so lovely, and I did promise the men's foil team I would be there because Miles was the first one who said, if we don't win gold, they're going to be disappointed. So I promised them that I would come and try to be their good luck charm for that team.
You're a good luck.
I hope so, because that team has worked so incredibly hard and come so incredibly close. And they were fantastic. They were all extremely tall, though. Thank God Lee Kiefer came through. I felt so much better afterwards. After all the guys came through. Miles Chamley-Watson is a scary individual. He is like 6'5", and he's so soft-spoken and lovely. But the foil guys were tall, but they were just really, really fantastic. And thank you, USA Fencing, for making it so easy for us to get such really great content to share with all of you.
Right. So we cannot wait to share pictures from the venue, at least, of what we're allowed to show. But oh man, that I saw pictures of the venue recently, and it's stunning. They're at the Grand Palais along with Taekwondo. It will be just amazing in person. So good luck, team. Thanks for thanks for joining Team Shookfustan. And that's going to do it for this episode. Let us know what you think of foil fencing.
You can find us on X, YouTube, and Instagram at FlameAlivePod. Send us an email at flamealivepod@gmail.com. Call or text us at 208-352-6348. That's 208-FLAME-IT. Chat with us and other fans on our Facebook group, Keep the Flame Alive Podcast. All of these will work while we are in Paris, so feel free to reach out. And last up, sign up for our now soon-to-be daily newsletter during the games for more info, and you can do that at our website, flamealivepod.com.
On Monday, we will have our first show direct from Paris. It will be the last time before the games kicks off that we will be coming to you. It'll be our Paris preview show. It's going to be so exciting. So please tune in for that. Please don't forget to tell a friend about the show so we can all watch together. Let us know what sports you're looking forward to watching. We want to see pictures of your screen setups. We want to hear from you for in the US, those of you who get to go watch the opening ceremonies on IMAX. I cannot wait to hear what that is like. I can't believe it. We've been planning for so long and now it's here. So thank you so much for listening. And until Monday, keep the flame alive.